The Grand Monarch restaurant was the kind of place where power had a seat at every table. The air smelled faintly of oak-aged wine, seared steak, and money. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen raindrops, and violins played soft, expensive notes that made conversations feel like secrets. At the corner table near the window sat Ethan Cole, billionaire CEO of Cole Dynamics, the man behind the world's most advanced AI-driven defense system. Tall, composed, mid-30s, with eyes that had seen more betrayal than most men twice his age. But tonight, he was tired. He'd been smiling at potential investors for 3 straight hours, every handshake another layer of exhaustion. He checked his watch. 9:17 p.m. Almost over. "Would you like anything else, sir?" came a gentle voice. Ethan looked up. The waitress, Lena, was new. He'd noticed her earlier, moving efficiently through the crowd. No nonsense, no fake smiles. There was a quiet confidence about her that didn't fit the usual staff demeanor. "Just the check, thank you," he said, softening his tone. Lena nodded and turned away, her auburn ponytail swaying as she disappeared into the kitchen. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temple. He couldn't wait to get home. That's when the door opened. 5 men stepped in, too quiet, too controlled. Dressed in dark jackets that didn't match the restaurant's elegance. Their eyes scanned the room like hunters measuring distance to prey. Lena was just returning with Ethan's bill when she noticed them. Her instincts, honed, buried, and long ignored, kicked in instantly. She froze, tray in hand, observing details others missed. One man's subtle hand signal, another's sleeve bulge that screamed concealed weapon. Her heart rate rose, but her expression didn't change. She'd seen men like that before, years ago, in the desert, under fire. One of the men, broad shoulders, scar under his jaw, locked eyes with Ethan's table. The air shifted. Lena's voice lowered as she leaned in. "Sir," she whispered urgently, "you need to leave. Now." Ethan blinked. "What?" "Too late." The first man reached into his jacket and pulled out a knife. Another flipped a table, scattering glasses and silverware. Gasps erupted. Screams followed. The violin stopped mid-note. Chaos spread like wildfire. Ethan stood up instinctively, but before he could react, one of the attackers shoved him back down. "You shouldn't have leaked that system, Cole," the leader growled. "You just made a lot of powerful enemies." Lena's hand tightened around the metal tray she was holding. The weight felt familiar, like a weapon she'd used before. Every instinct she'd tried to bury for the past 2 years came roaring back. She dropped the tray deliberately. It hit the floor with a sharp clang. The nearest attacker turned toward the sound, just as Lena moved. Her elbow shot forward, smashing into his face. Blood sprayed. He crumpled. Before the others could react, she pivoted, kicked another man's knee sideways, and slammed a coffee pot across his jaw. Guests screamed and ducked under tables. The host dove behind the bar. Someone shouted, "Call the police." Ethan stared in disbelief. The quiet waitress he'd barely noticed was dismantling armed men like it was muscle memory. One of the assailants lunged at her with a knife. She sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The blade clattered to the marble floor. She followed with a strike to his throat, sending him gasping. "Who is she?" Ethan murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Lena didn't answer. She was already moving. Another man grabbed a terrified woman as a shield. "Back off, lady," he barked, knife trembling near the hostage's neck. Lena's eyes locked on him. Cold, focused, unreadable. She raised her hands slightly, stepping closer, calm as a whisper. "Let her go," she said evenly. The attacker sneered. "Or what?" She shifted her weight. "Or I'll make sure you never hold a knife again." He laughed. That half-second of arrogance was all she needed. Her hand snapped out, grabbing a fork from a nearby table. With surgical precision, she threw it, hard. The metal prongs struck his wrist. He yelped, dropping the knife, and before he could recover, she closed the distance, slamming him backward into a wall. The woman ran free. The other diners broke into cheers and cries of disbelief. Phones were recording. The leader, furious, yanked Ethan up and pressed a blade to his throat. "One move and your boss dies," he shouted, dragging him backward toward the exit. Lena froze. Her eyes never left the knife. "You don't want to do this," she said, her voice low, steady, deadly calm. "Oh, I think I do, he hissed. Back up. Her body went still, but her mind calculated everything. The distance, the man's angle, Ethan's position, the reflection of the knife in a nearby glass panel. Then, one sharp breath. A flick of the wrist. She grabbed a spoon from the table and hurled it at the man's face. He flinched instinctively, loosening his grip. That single blink was all she needed. Lena lunged, catching his arm mid-motion. In one fluid movement, she twisted his wrist until the knife dropped, then swept his leg out from under him. The man hit the ground hard. In seconds, she had him pinned, knee on his chest, knife now in her hand. Stay down, she ordered, breathing hard but composed. Sirens wailed in the distance. Closer, closer. The flashing lights painted the windows red and blue. Police stormed the restaurant within moments. Officers disarmed the wounded attackers and cuffed them on the floor. Lena stood slowly, her hands shaking slightly now that the adrenaline faded. Broken glass and spilled wine sparkled around her feet. The restaurant looked like a war zone. Ethan stood, still pale, still processing what had just happened. He took a cautious step forward. How did you? Lena wiped blood from her forearm with a napkin. Old training, she said simply. Training? You mean like military? She interrupted, eyes on the floor. Special forces. I left that life behind. He stared at her, amazed. You saved my life. She gave a small shrug. You should probably work on your security detail. The police began questioning witnesses. Reporters were already outside, shouting. Someone had uploaded footage online, Lena disarming men twice her size. It would go viral within hours. An officer approached her. Ma'am, you need medical attention. I'm fine, she said quickly. Just tired. She looked at Ethan one last time. His shirt was torn, a small cut near his neck, but he was alive. She exhaled in relief, then said quietly, I'll be going. Wait, he said, stepping closer. What's your name? Lena, she answered. Lena Ward. Ethan hesitated. You're not just a waitress, are you? She half smiled, just enough to hint at something unspoken. Tonight I was, she said. Then she turned and walked out through the broken glass doors, her figure fading into the flashing lights of police cars. And Ethan Cole, one of the most powerful men in America, stood among the wreckage, realizing that sometimes, the people who save your life aren't the ones in suits or uniforms. Sometimes, they're the ones quietly refilling your glass. Until the night fate forces them to show who they really are. The headlines were everywhere the next morning. Waitress saves billionaire CEO in dramatic restaurant attack. 5 men armed, 1 woman stopped them all. Who was Lena Ward? Clips from a dozen shaky phone recordings filled every news channel. Social media exploded with hashtags like #HeroWaitress and #RealLifeActionMovie. Everyone wanted to know who she was, where she'd come from, and how a restaurant employee had taken down 5 armed men without backup. But Lena Ward wanted none of it. She turned off her phone, packed what little she owned into a duffel bag, and disappeared from her rented room before sunrise. Fame wasn't her reward, it was her nightmare. She'd left that world behind for a reason. 3 days later, Ethan Cole sat in his penthouse office overlooking the city skyline, watching the footage for what must have been the 100th time. Each frame burned into his mind. Lena's speed, precision, calm under pressure. He'd survived a lot in business, but nothing like that night. There was one detail he couldn't forget. Just before she left, she had looked at him, not with fear or heroism, but with quiet understanding. The kind you only saw in people who'd seen death up close. He needed to find her. His assistant, Marla, entered with a stack of reports. The attackers, 3 of them have military backgrounds, she said. Foreign contracts, mercenary work. The police think it was a professional hit. Who hired them? Ethan asked. She hesitated. That's where it gets complicated. The money trail runs through a dummy corporation registered under Cole Dynamics. Ethan froze. What? Marla nodded grimly. Someone inside your company paid them. For a long moment, the CEO said nothing. His jaw tightened. Find out who. And the woman. Ethan looked out at the city again. Find her too. It took him 2 days to track Lena down. He found her in a small veterans outreach center downtown, an old warehouse converted into a gym. She was barefoot, dressed in sweatpants and a black tank top, guiding a group of teenage girls through self-defense drills. Don't think strength, she told them. Think balance. Use their weight against them. Control, not power. Ethan watched quietly from the doorway until she dismissed the class. When the last girl left, Lena turned and saw him. Her expression didn't change. You followed me. I call it investigated, Ethan replied, stepping closer. You're not easy to find. That's the point. He smiled faintly. You saved my life. I thought I should at least say thank you. You already did, she said, grabbing her water bottle. Now you can go. He hesitated. They were professionals, Lena. They didn't come for money. They came for me, and my project. Lena stopped mid-sip. The AI defense system, she said flatly. Ethan nodded. You know about it. I read the news like everyone else, she said, but her tone was too careful. Those men knew things they shouldn't have, he continued. One of them called me by my private code name, something only a handful of executives know. Someone inside Coal Dynamics leaked it. Lena's shoulders stiffened. An inside job. Exactly. And I think you know more than you're saying. She met his gaze, unflinching. I know people who operate like that. Clean, fast, disposable. Someone hired mercenaries to silence you before your tech went public. I've seen those contracts before, years ago. In the military. She nodded slowly. After Afghanistan, I worked private ops. We were told we were protecting interests, but most of the time, those interests were just billionaires fighting billionaires. I left when I realized I was helping the wrong side. Ethan studied her face. So why wait tables? Because I'm done with that world, she said sharply. The noise, the lies, the blood. The restaurant was quiet, simple, safe. He stepped closer, voice soft. But you didn't hesitate that night. You didn't freeze. She looked away. Because if I'd done nothing, people would have died. That doesn't mean I want to go back. Ethan leaned on a nearby counter. I need someone who doesn't just talk about security, they understand it. Whoever hired those men is still out there, and they'll try again. Help me stop them. No, Lena. I said no. Her tone left no room for argument. You think this is a movie, Mr. Cole. You bring me in, you paint a target on my back again. I've already lost enough. Ethan was silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, you saved my life, but you also woke something up in me. I've spent years trusting technology to protect people. Maybe what I really need is someone who still believes in instinct. Lena's eyes flickered, a trace of emotion beneath the calm. You don't give up, do you? Not when something matters. She sighed, pacing the room. You have no idea what you're asking for. Then show me. There was a long pause. Then, with a resigned exhale, she said, fine. But I don't wear heels, I don't pour wine, and I don't take orders from suits. Ethan smiled. Deal. 3 weeks later, Coal Dynamics quietly launched a new division, Internal Threat Security, directed by Lena Ward. No press release, no headlines. Just a name on a locked door. Lena worked mostly at night. She reviewed files, traced communication trails, studied footage of the restaurant attack. One night, she found it, a transaction ID that matched one of Ethan's senior executives, Marcus Hale, head of defense contracts. She called Ethan immediately. You might want to sit down. By morning, Marcus Hale was gone. Disappeared. Accounts drained. Access revoked. But not before Lena found something chilling, a message buried in his encrypted files. Phase 2 in progress. The girl wasn't supposed to be there. The girl, Ethan repeated. You. Lena frowned. Looks like saving your life put me on their radar too. Then we protect each other, Ethan said. For the first time, she didn't argue. Months passed. The partnership between the billionaire and the ex-soldier grew stronger, professional at first, then built on mutual trust. Ethan stopped seeing her as a waitress who saved him. She became his shield, his strategist, his moral compass. Then came the second attack. This time, it wasn't physical, it was digital. A coordinated cyberstrike aimed at Coal Dynamics' AI core. The system was seconds from collapse when Lena spotted the breach pattern. They're trying to override your prototype, she said, typing furiously. If they succeed, your tech becomes a weapon in their hands. Can you stop it? Ethan asked. She smirked slightly. You hired me, didn't you? Within minutes, the attack was neutralized. Every trace led back to a shell company tied to Marcus Hale, and beyond that, to foreign defense investors who'd once funded black ops missions she'd been part of. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was fighting ghosts from her own past. When it was over, Ethan walked into the security hub where she stood, eyes on the screen. You did it, he said quietly. She turned. We did it, he smiled. I told you you belonged here. She rolled her eyes, but there was warmth there now. Don't get used to me saying this, but maybe you were right. That night, at a press event, a reporter asked Ethan about the mysterious woman now running his security team. He smiled faintly. Yes, she was a waitress, he said. But she's also the reason this company, and I, are still standing. Across the room, Lena watched quietly, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She didn't like the spotlight, but deep down, she knew something had changed. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from her past. She was using it, and as Ethan's words echoed across the room, she allowed herself the smallest smile. Because sometimes, fate doesn't send you a savior in uniform. Sometimes, it sends you a waitress with a soldier's heart, and the strength to change everything.